You know that person who somehow rearranges their entire schedule every 4 years? The one who sets alarms at ridiculous hours, plans family gatherings around kickoffs, and treats the World Cup final like it's a national holiday? Maybe that person is you. Maybe you've stayed awake at 3 a.m. just to watch a group stage match between two countries you've never even visited. Maybe you've found yourself celebrating goals so passionately that your neighbors probably think you won the lottery. And maybe you've wondered, why am I so invested in this? From the outside, some people don't understand it. They assume it's just about sports. 22 people chasing a ball around a field. What's the big deal? But psychology tells a completely different story. Because people who never miss a World Cup match aren't simply watching football. They're participating in something much bigger. Something ancient. Something deeply human. And once you understand why, you'll never look at the World Cup the same way again. Think about it for a second. Life is usually fragmented. Everyone's busy. People have different interests, different routines, different opinions. But every 4 years, something strange happens. Suddenly, millions, even billions, of people are sharing the same emotional experience. Complete strangers celebrate together. Families gather around televisions. Social media explodes. Offices become quieter during match hours. Entire countries seem to hold their breath before penalties. It's almost magical. But psychologists have a name for this phenomenon: collective effervescence. Sounds complicated, but the idea is surprisingly simple. Humans are wired to feel stronger emotions when they experience them together. It's why concerts feel different from listening to music alone, why stadiums feel electric, why festivals, holidays, and celebrations have existed in every civilization throughout history. Your brain isn't designed just to experience joy by yourself. It's designed to share it, and that's exactly what the World Cup provides. In fact, researchers have found that shared emotional experiences strengthen feelings of belonging and connection. Your brain releases dopamine, the chemical associated with reward and pleasure, but it also activates systems connected to social bonding. In other words, when your team scores and millions of people erupt in celebration at the same moment, your brain experiences something incredibly powerful. Not just happiness, togetherness. And maybe that's why people who never miss a World Cup match often describe it as special. Because special things aren't always logical. Sometimes they're emotional. Sometimes they're tribal. Which brings us to another fascinating piece of psychology. Humans have always belonged to tribes. Thousands of years ago, those tribes were necessary for survival. Being part of a group meant protection, identity, and meaning. Today, we don't hunt mammoths anymore. But our brains haven't changed nearly as much as we'd like to think. We still crave belonging. We still want to be part of something bigger than ourselves. And football, especially during the World Cup, creates modern tribes. Suddenly, people who have never met feel connected because they wear the same colors. Someone scores, and complete strangers hug each other. Think about that. How often in everyday life do you hug someone you just met? Probably never. But during the World Cup, it's completely normal, because for those 90 minutes, you're family. And family isn't always defined by blood. Sometimes it's defined by shared emotions. This is why people become so passionate. It's not irrational, it's human. Of course, there's another layer to this. The World Cup only comes around every 4 years, and scarcity changes everything. Imagine if birthdays happened every week. They wouldn't feel special anymore. Imagine if New Year's Eve happened every month. Eventually, nobody would care. But because the World Cup is rare, your brain treats it differently. Psychologists call this the scarcity principle. We value things more when they're limited. That's why people who never miss a World Cup match often protect that time fiercely. They know subconsciously that these moments are temporary. Miss this tournament, and you wait another 4 years. And 4 years is a long time. Players retire, legends are born, children grow up, life changes. In a strange way, every World Cup becomes a time capsule. Think about the tournament you watched as a kid. Maybe you remember where you were, who you watched it with, what your family was doing. Maybe certain goals bring back memories of simpler times. Because memory doesn't work like a camera, it's emotional. The brain attaches memories to feelings. That's why hearing an old song can transport you back 20 years. And that's why watching the World Cup can feel nostalgic even whilst it's happening. You're not just watching matches. You're creating memories that future you will treasure. And that's beautiful. But perhaps the most interesting thing about people who never miss a World Cup match is that they're often seekers of stories. Because sports aren't really about scores. They're about narratives. Humans love stories. Always have. Long before Netflix and YouTube, people gathered around fires listening to tales of heroes and underdogs. And every World Cup creates new stories. The unknown player who shocks the world. The aging legend chasing one final dream. The tiny nation that refuses to give up. The heartbreaking defeat. The miraculous comeback. It's basically mythology in real time. And your brain loves uncertainty. Researchers have discovered that unpredictable rewards create stronger dopamine responses than predictable ones. That's why penalty shootouts are so stressful. Your heart races, your palms sweat. You can't look away. Because uncertainty is exciting. Your brain is hooked on possibility. And possibility is what the World Cup delivers better than almost anything else. After all, nobody really knows what's going to happen. Favordogs collapse. Underdogs rise. History changes. And maybe that's part of why people become obsessed. Because in a world where so much feels predictable, the World Cup reminds us that miracles still happen. That hope isn't foolish. That impossible things sometimes become possible. Remember when nobody believed a certain team had a chance? And then somehow, against all odds, they made history? People remember moments like that for decades, not because they won money, not because they gained anything practical, but because those moments remind us that life itself is unpredictable, and maybe our own dreams aren't impossible either. There's also something wonderfully innocent about caring deeply about a tournament. Adults spend so much time worrying, bills, work, deadlines, responsibilities. Sometimes life feels like one long to-do list. But then the World Cup arrives, and suddenly people become children again. They paint their faces. They scream at televisions. They laugh. They cry. They believe. And psychologists actually consider playfulness an important part of mental well-being. Play isn't childish. It's essential. It helps reduce stress, strengthens relationships, and gives life color. So if you've ever felt embarrassed about being too passionate during the World Cup, maybe there's nothing embarrassing about it at all. Maybe you're simply allowing yourself to feel something fully, authentically. And that's becoming surprisingly rare, because many people spend their lives emotionally guarded, always composed, always careful, always pretending not to care. But the World Cup gives people permission to care, permission to celebrate, permission to hope, permission to be vulnerable. And vulnerability, despite what many people think, isn't weakness. It's the birthplace of connection. It's where memories live. It's where joy becomes real. Interestingly, researchers have also found that anticipation itself can be as rewarding as the event. Think about the months leading up to the tournament. The predictions, the debates, the countdown. Your brain starts releasing dopamine before the first whistle even blows. In other words, happiness isn't only found in reaching destinations. Sometimes it's found in looking forward to them, which is a lesson that extends far beyond football. Because life isn't just about achievements. It's about anticipation, hope, dreams, things to look forward to. And perhaps that's what people who never miss a World Cup match understand, even if they don't realize it. They're protecting joy. They're preserving rituals. They're creating memories. They're staying connected to family, culture, and community. They're participating in one of the few events that still has the power to make billions of people feel united, if only for a moment. And honestly, in a world that often feels divided, maybe that's something worth celebrating. Because the World Cup isn't really about football. Not entirely. It's about belonging. It's about hope. It's about stories. It's about remembering that humans are emotional creatures, not machines. And perhaps the person who rearranges their schedule every 4 years isn't obsessed. Perhaps they're simply responding to something deeply human. Something that reminds them they're part of a bigger story. Something that makes life feel a little less ordinary. So if you're someone who never misses a World Cup match, maybe you don't need to explain yourself. Maybe you don't need to justify why you care so much. Because caring about things is part of what makes us human. And if a game played thousands of miles away can bring families together, create lifelong memories, inspire dreams, and make billions of strangers feel connected, well, maybe that's not trivial at all. Maybe that's extraordinary. And I'd love to know about you. Have you ever missed a World Cup match? Or are you one of those people who somehow finds a way to watch every single one, no matter what? Share your story in the comments. Because sometimes the most fascinating thing about psychology isn't found in textbooks. It's found in the little things people love. And if you're curious about why humans do the strange, beautiful, and surprisingly relatable things we do, there's always more to explore together. After all, understanding human behavior isn't just about understanding other people. It's about understanding yourself.